The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When the Magi had departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." Joseph rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt. He stayed there until the death of Herod, that what the Lord had said through the prophet might be fulfilled. "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod had died, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who sought the child's life are dead." He rose, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea, in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go back there. And because he had been warned in a dream, he departed from the region of Galilee. He went and dwelt in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus. Today we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. And today the Church shows us by this feast that the Word which has come to us at Christmas, Christ Himself, is not a mere solitary moment in time, but the continual living out of the event of His humanity, even though much of it is hidden from us. Yet, despite this hiddenness of His life and of the life of the Holy Family, they can teach us much about what Christian families are and how they should be. The Holy Family serves as the context, the hope, and the model for all families. And the Church understands the family to be a man and a woman married and with their children. Their family, the Holy Family, is the fullness of that institution which God has established for true human flourishing, and is an image of the Holy Trinity itself, a communion of true gift. The Church teaches that the institution of marriage is prior to any recognition by a public authority. The same public authority has an obligation to recognize it, and it should be considered the normal point of reference by which the different forms of family relationship are to be evaluated. In light of the family established by God, we know that there is no such thing as a same-sex marriage, right? It doesn't exist. It is a human manipulation of what marriage really is. But we can also see how divorce, cohabitation, and polygamous arrangements are grave wounds to both the people who participate in them and the family itself. These either destroy the family bond or present themselves as a family when they have not been made true and permanent, have not been covenanted before the Lord. And so the latter of these share in some aspects of family, but cannot possess the fullness. The measure of a family is how close it is to the institution established by God from the beginning. Yet in today's world, we know, right, that many families are broken or wounded or hurting. And they're wounded by two things, really: sin and death. It's really the only two things that really count. And we have to be honest enough to say that these families are not whole. They're not in the fullness of what there could be. They're hurting. But where can we turn, right? Where can we turn for examples of the fullness of the family, of the life of the family, if not the Holy Family itself? And this is why we should, as Pope Paul VI said back in 1964 when he journeyed to Nazareth, he wrote beautifully on the family. And one of the things he says is that the Holy Family is a school for us, where we learn. We learn how the family imitates and enters into the life of God. He says, we understand through them why we must maintain a spiritual discipline if we wish to follow the teaching of the gospel and become disciples of Christ. In the school of Nazareth, that is the life of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, we see the structure of the family as it should be. And we learn three very important lessons. We learn the importance of silence. We learn the importance of obedience and of prayer. And we learn how to be holy in our own weaknesses and in the daily struggles of our family life. And so Paul VI reminds us, in the first place, the school teaches us silence. And he says, if only the esteem for silence, a wonderful and indispensable spiritual atmosphere, could be reborn in us. Whereas we are deafened by the din, the noise, and the discordant voices in the frenetic, turbulent life of our time. Oh, the silence of Nazareth. Teach us to be steadfast. Teach us to have good thoughts and be attentive to our inner life. Ready to hear God's hidden inspiration clearly and the exhortation of true teachers. It is without a doubt that silence in the heart of the family, that is a making space for God to speak, is often scarce in our families today with so much going on. And with the internet and tablets and phones. But when God incarnate enters into the life of a family, he leaves a pondering space. For just as Mary and Joseph pondered the mystery of their son, who called God Father, they pondered him in an interior silence. And so we too, families too, need to make this room for the pondering of God. Jesus' return with Mary and Joseph to the silence of Nazareth also speaks to us of the importance of obedience in the life of the family. This obedience is a real enacting of the mission on which Jesus was sent by his Father. For Jesus not only submits to bearing our human nature, but he submits to be obedient to the very humanity he brought into being. All children are called to be obedient as Jesus was to his parents, fulfilling the fourth commandment to honor father and mother. Jesus shows us that obedience is fundamentally an act of love, a willingness to give oneself over to another. At the same time, Joseph and Mary show us obedience to the will of God by being responsible for each other and for the needs of Jesus. They search diligently for him. They raise him. They teach him. And as good parents, they also command the obedience of their son. Not only, but only for his own good, not for their mere pleasure and their will. And so the two sides of obedience are revealed in the Holy Family, that of children and of parents, both of which are submissions to the one will of God. Both modes of obedience demand selfless love. Finally, the School of Nazareth teaches us how to pray. Pope Emeritus Benedict said the following, that Jesus was introduced by Mary and Joseph into the religious community and frequented the synagogue of Nazareth. With that, he learned to make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Mary and Joseph teach us and remind us that parents are the first and primary educators of their children and are especially responsible for introducing them to God and teaching them the ways of proper worship. We also learn that the obedience of the Holy Family to the will of God honors God and are thus true acts of worship, connected all the way to the singular act of obedience of Jesus on the cross. There, every act of obedience done within the context of the family shows and that is a part of and in obedience to the will of God. Is an act of worship of God himself. And so Mary and Joseph teach us how to pray. They teach us how to worship God in the very heart and core of the family. And so for these reasons, the church has long called the family the domestic church, where prayer and piety are first developed and worship here. And so it is that the School of Nazareth, in the home of the Holy Family, teaches us about maintaining the pondering silence before God. It teaches us the importance of obedience to God. And it teaches us that the home is the first place of prayer, the first place of worship. The Holy Family raises aloft the nature of the family for all of us to see. Pope Emeritus Benedict said that the Holy Family in Nazareth is truly the prototype of every Christian family, which, united in the sacrament of marriage and nourished by the Word in the Eucharist, is called to carry out the wonderful vocation and mission of being the living cell not only of society, but also of the whole church. The family is a sign and instrument of unity for the entire human race. Let us pray that the light of Christ bring healing and wholeness to families wounded by sin and death. And at the same time, may the Holy Family help Christian families to be, in every part of the world, living images of God's immense love.